don't know if I'm on or off because I had a notice I was off.
Got it. You're on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for the Sabbath day once again. Lord, we thank you for the studies that we've had so far this day, Lord, and the many blessings they have been, Lord. And we thank you for the progressing light, Father, and we thank you for uh, your love, care for us in bringing these things um, when we're ready, though some may feel they're not ready, but you've promised in your word you have many things yet to tell us, but the disciples weren't ready, and you've held these things back until we're ready. And so I praise you for that, Lord. And I just want to invite the presence of the Holy Spirit now to guide the discussion and the study that we're about to enter into. And I thank you. And I also want to ask, Lord, that you would be with the speaker. Send your Holy Spirit, Father, to anoint them, and that we may hear your words in this message. And I pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I like your guys' picture there.
I thought I'd put something up. I don't know if I'm muted.
Okay, so we were going to do the sexism and stuff in the different countries, and I don't want to just like plow in here and take over because there was already a plan for some other folks to present. So if anyone else wants to present first, I know I need at least one person too because I need to finish up a couple things, and my mom's going to do that for hers. She's willing to go first, but is anyone else interested?
Well, I'd kind of like to go first because I have to get up very early in the morning at 3 o'clock in order to get to work. So if you wouldn't mind, and mine's short. So.
That's great.
That would be great.
Okay, then I will go ahead, and I've never done this before, so I just hit share screen.
Yeah.
Do you have the file open? The actual file open?
I do.
Okay, have the file open, then share screen, then you'll see the screen that'll show whatever you have open and pick that one.
Okay, let me go ahead and set it up here where I can be on my first page before I open it then. Okay, from the beginning. Okay, and I'll come back here and hit share screen. And then, let me see. Okay, my PowerPoint. Then I hit the one that I want and then hit share, right?
Go play it. Yeah, perfect. You did it.
Okay, you guys can all see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to hit from current slide so I can bring it up. Okay, there it is. Okay, so mine is on Ireland, obviously. You can see that. If you guys have any comments you want to make, please unmute yourself. Interrupt me because of course I can't see the chat. So let's go ahead and get started on this. Let's talk about sexism in Ireland. I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Sexism, racism, prejudice, and bias are all still very much real. Don't get me wrong, we've come a long way in the recent past, not only because we now have bodily autonomy, but because we have more of an equal access to jobs than previous generations. But there is still inequalities and inherent gender biases in Ireland. So let's keep reading to find out why and what they mean. Jokes about sexism still exist. There's a clip doing the rounds at the moment from the RTE archives called Male Chauvinism. It includes men, always men, talking about women's place in Ireland. It was filmed in 1990. Think about that, 30 years ago. The attitudes contained within the piece have hopefully changed a bit. I'd like to think that the young men in the clip, who would be in their 50s now, have changed their attitudes, but have they really? So what I'd like to do here is go ahead and click on this link and have us watch this little film. It's only 7 minutes long. Is that okay with you, or should I continue without it and let you guys watch it later?
It's okay with me, only the thing is when we go to post it on YouTube, it may not post, so we may have to do it separate, watch it later.
Okay, I can always put in this link in the chat if you want me to.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's go ahead and watch it, and then I can also put the link in the chat for anybody to review later. Okay, does everybody see it?
No, because your slideshow shared. But if you share it in our recording, YouTube probably won't let us record, won't let us upload the.
Oh, okay, so nobody can watch this video then, right?
At least not, we can, but YouTube will most likely flag us and not let us upload our video, because when we embed a video in there, then often, because it might be.
Is there any way you can pause the recording or no?
Well, can I show it now and then just put the link in the recording? Okay, this is the one I want. Okay, so can you all see now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, it's not working. Here we go. Okay. The Age of Equality, 1990. Despite the advances made by the women's rights movement, stereotypical male chauvinism is alive and well in Ireland. For decades, the women's movement in Ireland has fought for rights and equality. While attitudes in 1990 are more enlightened, the age of equality remains an aspiration. Stereotypical male chauvinism is alive and well on Irish streets, in the workplace, and in the schools and universities. It's hard to find proof of changed attitudes, but nowadays it's a lot more private. There's no way a man would be able to say these comments out loud because they would, rightly, be called out on it. But it's hard not to think that these attitudes are completely gone away. It's deep-seated, and the men who made these comments are probably the men who hold power in management and leadership positions. Men who got to where they are for being part of the boys' club, signing deals over golf matches and pints. 30 years isn't that many. And here's the author that's saying this, that she turned 30 this year. Obviously not me, add another 30 to that for me. But her name is Michelle O'Connor, and she's the one that wrote this whole article. She says, I turned 30 this year, and while for me, I've developed a lot. I've learned how to walk, talk, started and finished school, university, and started my own business. So my personal 30 years have seen a lot happen, but not a huge amount has actually changed. Think about this. In 1990, these comments were made. In 1992, there was a call for the ban on abortion, introduced in 1983, to be removed. The referendum didn't remove the ban. The only change was women were allowed to travel, and they could also access information. In 1995, a referendum was held to allow divorce in Ireland, but only if there was no hope of reconciliation, and only after the couple had been separated for 4 years. To me, that seems like a long time to go through all that. before you're even allowed to get a divorce. Goodness. In 1996, the last Magdalene laundry closed its doors. Yep, 1996. Fast forward to 2018. After a decades-long fight for women's rights and the constitutional ban on abortion was repealed, finally. Now, question, does anybody know what a Magdalene laundry is?
Nope. I was getting ready to look it up.
You know, that's why I looked it up, and I put this link right here. You know, I saw this, and the first thing I thought it was laundry. Okay, maybe it's a place where people go do their laundry.
I saw a movie years back called Magdalene Sisters. And when you said Magdalene laundries in Ireland, that's the first thing I thought about. And maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah, it could be. Well, and I'd like to share this description, or I can just read it. Maybe it'd be easier if I just read it to you instead of stop share, you know, and all that. It says the Magdalene laundries in Ireland, also known as Magdalene asylums, were institutions usually run by Roman Catholic orders, which operated from the 18th to the late 20th centuries. They were run ostensibly to house fallen women. And fallen women means that they've, you know, let's see, how do they put it?
Got pregnant out of wedlock.
It says it's an archaic term which was used to describe a woman who has lost her innocence. And I guess that's a nice way of saying that she lost her virginity and fallen from the grace of God. In the 19th century, Britain especially, the meaning came to be closely associated with the loss of a surrendered woman's chastity. So yeah, that's what a fallen woman is. They were run to house these fallen women, an estimated 30,000 of whom were confined in these institutions in Ireland. In 1993, a mass grave containing 155 corpses was uncovered in the convent grounds of one of the laundries. This led to media revelations about the operations of the secretive institutions. A formal state of apology was issued in 2013, and a £50 million compensation scheme for survivors was set up by the Irish government. The religious orders which operated the laundries have rejected activist demands that they financially contribute to this program. So that's pretty spooky. So let me go back to my slide here. Okay, there it is. Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great. So that's what a Magdalene laundry is. Yes, they actually did do laundry, but because that was considered a woman's job. But it was basically an asylum. So next slide. There's still a problem. First of all, the gender pay gap in Ireland currently stands at 14.4%. So the rest of the year, the work women do may as well be for free. Not only that, but constitutionally, women's place in Ireland is still in the home. Yep, legally, Article 41.2 of the Irish Constitution states, 2°, the state shall therefore endeavor to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labor to the neglect of their duties in the home. This is a legally binding document that can't be changed unless the people of Ireland vote for it in a referendum, and still it sits. The law hasn't been changed because our political parties are male-dominated, and the argument can be made that it doesn't hugely impact upon women's lives in general, but the fact remains that it's still there, sitting there, looming, available to potentially be used. The fact that it hasn't actually been amended says enough. It's an oversight and something that's overlooked, but definitely has an impact on our lives, not just as openly as we thought. In conclusion, yes, that clip from RTE, which, well, RTE, that's an Irish media business, about male chauvinism is a gas and mad to watch and think about how openly these lads spoke about their disdain for women's rights, about how feminists were militant. But unfortunately, there is also a proportion of these men who hold positions of power. And whether we know it or not, women aren't in leadership roles. Women are still spoken to in a patronizing way. Women still don't hold leadership roles. My generation is changing that, but there's still a ways to go. So yes, while men nowadays aren't so openly sexist, sexism still exists, just like racism still exists. It's just all kept quiet. So if you want to see more articles that Michelle O'Connor wrote, I can also put that link in the chat too. So if you want to see more about how she knows that this happens, check out her blog series about gender biases. And there's a link I can put in the chat if you guys want to check it out later. So that's it. Very short.
That's great.
They were
good.
Irish is generally the Catholics, right?
Yes.
Part
Yeah.
of the, okay. That's what I thought.
Okay.
Really nice. You did good.
Well, I've got 2 more to do. I haven't even started working on yet. So
That was great, Anna. Really good job.
thank you. Who's next?
Please share the links.
Yeah, share the links.
I will definitely put those links in there. Yes.
So who is Francisco going next? Or Christina?
Is it me?
Yeah, I think so. Sorry.
Okay.
I think that's what they said.
Okay.
Romania, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So is this the one that, why is it not opening?
Do you have it open?
Okay.
You got it?
Okay, everybody can see?
Yep, got it.
Close the door to your bedroom because I have an echo. Okay, so of course, my study is about Romania. I will start with a little bit of history, not much. I didn't really go in history, only what I wanted to see, and then we go in the inequalities. The modern Romanian flag inspired the feudal flag of the ruling lords of the region, but the first flag representing all of Romania was later developed. The first flag representing all of Romania was designed by a revolutionary movement working in the 19th century to secure Romania's independence from foreign rule. And I would like to mention, as I'm going to say a little bit later, the foreign rule over Romania was the Ottoman Empire. So this is the flag, and these are feudal colors of the region with a pattern probably derived from the revolutionary French flag to create the flag of their movement. The Union was not completely independent of the Ottoman Empire, but had enough political independence to have its own flag, which had the same colors as the modern flag, but used vertical stripes. In school, we were told that the blue stands for freedom under the blue sky, yellow for grain, which was considered as, food, the most important, considered as gold, and red, the blood that was shed for the freedom. Wallachia and Moldova formed the Union, which eventually became Romania in 1859. January 24, 1859, Alexandru Ioan Cuza united the Romanian countries, and this was the first most important step. January 24 is a national holiday until today. In 1850, Romania paid for the last time tribute to the Ottoman Empire. And 1877 is the last year that Ottomans subjugated a country. And they did that for 400 years. I thought that was interesting. Multiple separations and unions followed, and in 1918 took place the Great Union of all states where Romanians lived. In 1918, Romania represented position number 10 in Europe based on size of land and number of people, and was recognized as a country internationally. The culture of Romania is the product of its geography and its distinct historical evolution. It is theorized and speculated that Romanians are related people, are the combination of descendants of Roman colonists and people indigenous to the region who were Romanized. So those were Dacian peoples, one of the major indigenous people of Southeast Europe. I will show you the map and you will see that it was called Dacia. Romanian's history has been full of rebounds. The culturally productive epoch were those of stability, when the people proved quite an impressive resourcefulness in the making up for less propitious periods and were able to rejoin the mainstream of Europe culture. So Ottoman Empire subjugated the country until almost the 20th century. The modeling role of France, especially in the fields of political ideas, administrative and law, as well as in literature, was paralleled from the mid-19th century down to the World War I by German culture as well, which also triggered constant relationship with the German world, not only at a cultural level, but in daily life as well. With the arrival of Soviet communists in the area, Romania quickly adopted many Soviet influences, and Russian was also widely taught in the country during Romanian socialist years. The population of Romania, I looked at this because I was always told that Romania is the size of California, and I just wanted to see if it's true. So population of Romania, 19 million. And Romania is about 92,000 square miles compared to California, which is almost double population, 39.5 million, and almost double square mile, 160, almost 164. These are two maps. This is where Romania is on the European map, and this is the Black Sea. This country here and the big piece here was also Romania before World War II, but now there are two distinct countries. So if you look on the globe, this is where Romania is. And I put this map here just because when you look, this is, as I said, Dacia, and this is the Black Sea. So this is where the country is. The south border of the country, the south border of the country is the river, the very big river Danube. If you guys read The Great Empire of History, what was his name? Xerxes, of the book of Esther. When he traveled to Europe all the way almost to Spain, he passed the Danube. So let's say from down here somewhere, he went all the way up like this through Europe, and he went through Romania. So this is where Romania would be. And with the Roman Empire being the West Roman Empire and the East Roman Empire, the Byzantine culture being the culture of Constantinople, that's kind of the culture that exists in this orange area. And that's where most of our Romanian culture comes from. Constantinople was the center of the Byzantine culture. Although Byzantine society was a society of inequality, both between the social strata and the rights of the two sexes, women in Byzantine time plays an important role. She directs business, participates in the church as a nun or church clerk, and plays an active role in political affairs. It also has equal rights with men to bequeath and inherit their property. Of course, it is still excluded from public offices with unique, perhaps allowed occupations of engaging with family, religion, and charity. Basic attributes of the perfect woman and husband are virginity, silence, and tolerance. Byzantine education has ensured elementary education for many girls. The Byzantine woman married early and was considered the head of the family and the protector of her children, especially if she was a widow and her children were still very young. So I just included this because this is very much a part of what Romanian people believe and behave by. Virginity, silence, and tolerance. That's all that is required of women. There is a big issue with inequality. She may be allowed to be a leader in certain areas like family, religion, charity, but not in leading positions. And that is until today, as we will see. I have a bunch of paragraphs here that will kind of help us make an idea of what's happening in Romania right now. How Romania fails is battered women. 8 reasons why Romanian society neglects its victims of domestic violence. What does a Romanian woman do with a blank piece of paper? She reads her rights. This joke encapsulates the country's attitude towards women and domestic abuse. Romanian society is aware of the damages that women suffer, but refuses to take such pain seriously. Regarding domestic violence in Romania, we're stuck in the Middle Ages, says Valentina Rujoiu, a professor in the University of Bucharest Faculty of Sociology and Social Assistance. Here we detail the reason why Romania fails is batter women. Men know best. Women in abusive relationships face criticism from a patriarchal mentality, which often elevates women's duty as a wife and partner over her personal safety. Many Romanian women are raised on the idea that a married woman must please her husband and do anything that he expects of her. This is why marital rape is seen by most women I spoke to as not part of physical abuse and not a crime in itself. Many women are expected to stay with her husbands rather than risk the stigma of separation. According to Rujoiu, the myth persists that the divorced woman is guilty for not being able to keep her man at home. Eleonora, an abused woman who won a divorce after 20 years in an abusive marriage, argues that after her separation, there was a supposition that she was available for every man. Just to drink some water. She, a breast cancer survivor in her 50s, still experiences such an attitude from her male neighbors who constantly proposition her in the street. Women also do not control the reins of the state. The Romanian parliament is only 11.5% women. But for those who do succeed, they often adopt the attitudes of their male colleagues. Mihaela, a victim of domestic violence who recently won a restraining order against her abusive husband, tells me that the judge in her case, a woman, gave her a divorce against her partner's wishes. In her final judgment, she stated by the Mihaela had not been a victim of domestic violence and argued using a contemptuous tone that she only managed to win the divorce because the complainant used favorable legislation. Meanwhile, Romanian society is changing, especially in the service industry. Women are ascending the career ladder faster than men, and many are the breadwinners in their family. Nevertheless, the stigma is still prevalent that men should be in charge of family finances, even if they are unemployed. One abused woman married to a jobless man told me that his attitude was always, his money was his money, my money was our money. By controlling family income, men can blackmail women into remaining in an abusive relationship. Silence is expected. In Romanian household, there is still a concept that what happens in the house stays in the house. According to a poll in InScope for Romania newspaper Adevărul, 50% of people believe domestic violence is a private matter. In the same poll, 30% of Romanians believe women are sometimes beaten up because they deserve it. To be beaten up is shameful. One of the obstacles the woman seeking help in an abusive relationship is the fear of judgment by the women's friends, relatives, neighbors, and colleagues. Sometimes the women victims are judged by their families, but mostly by society, says Valentina Rujoi. This is a problem of changing the mentality of the authorities. It's so hard to read this. Everyone judges women victims. Automatically, when a woman tells you that she was beaten by her husband for 30 years, but she has 5 children with him, you think, well, why did you stay for so long? Okay, can you take the next page? In the countryside, women are many times surrounded by the shame of what the neighbors will say when she files a complaint against her own husband. In the rural areas, it depends on whether the community accepts such practices, says Simona Burduja, psychotherapist at the Sensibil Foundation, which provides counseling and the shelter for victims. A woman doesn't know that she is in an abusive situation because if the lady next door experiences the same thing and says nothing, it means this is normal. I didn't know it was abuse. Adriana?
Madalina lives in a small town in Transylvania and has been in an abusive relationship for 16 years. Her husband attacked her, threatened to take her children away from her, and stopped her from moving around town alone. Only when randomly searching on the internet did she begin to realize that these were the symptoms of domestic violence and that she had the rights to defend herself. Women have little access to information about their rights, including recognizing the signs of domestic violence and having the tools to escape from an abusive relationship. Many women do not know what domestic violence is, says Mihaela Mangu. Many people associate domestic violence only with physical abuse. Legally, women have rights. Since 2012, abuse means physical, psychological, verbal, spiritual, economic, and sexual, but this change is not well known. Also, few women are aware that marital rape is a crime. Authorities do not care. I have 2 kids and I live with my husband. He came home one time and hit me. I screamed for help, hoping that some of my neighbors would come and help me, but no one came. He struck me against the floor, and whenever I was trying to get up, he would strike me again. I went to the police station. I asked the policeman to let my husband know that I have rights. The policeman asked me, "Do you want me to give him a fine?" I said, "What does it help me with if you fine him with 150 euro? That's the money for my children. I want you to make him aware that I have rights." The police told me that if I can't stay in a relationship anymore, I should get a divorce and not argue like a gypsy at the police station. In 14 of the Romania's 41 countries, there are no specialized services for victims of domestic violence. A large number of police officers are not trained in how to communicate with an abuse victim. They cannot recognize the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder or Stockholm syndrome, the situation where abused women sympathize, defend, and remain with their abuser. There are also a few mixed teams of male and female police officers to tackle the problem. We don't have an extended network of specialists in domestic violence, and the police are not prepared to deal with this, says Rujoyu. Care does not exist for all. Abuse victims, Ioana lives in a large town in North Romania. She contacted me desperate for help. I searched to find her free psychological counseling in her county. I called the local social service. From the central office, I was directed to a department that purportedly covered domestic violence or abused women. The woman who answered the phone did not introduce herself. She asked me, "What do you want?" I said, "I know a woman who is in an abusive relationship with her husband and that she needs free psychological counseling." She told me, "Well, if the lady is abused by her husband, then why is she still staying with him?" She said the social assistance department only offers counseling to women in their care. If the lady does not want to leave her husband, there is nothing we can do. Many social workers do their best to help abused women, but Valentina Rujoiu considers that the country lacks specialists regarding domestic violence and that this is an underfinanced domain which needs training.
I have a question for you. Do you mind?
Yes.
So from what I'm hearing is like the community has influence on the families and what takes place for or against women. Is that still happening today, presently, and all that?
Yeah, this is a very recent article. Yeah, wow. And this lady, Valentina Rujoiu, she is the leader of the feminist movement in Romania.
Wow, that's
yeah, it's it's still going on, so I don't know how long it's going to take.
It's interesting when you think about different countries and feminist movements in different countries, how someplace like this would really like to keep all that out so that women don't get any kind of ideas in their head that it can be better.
Yes.
Is that the way it is there too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but also as I showed the map of the Byzantine Empire, you know, that type of education, because it's so deep embedded in the Orthodox religion, and Romania is majority is Orthodox, you know, it's like you can't get it out of people's brains. Yeah. Like, see these women talking here, they have no idea they have rights. When they find out they have rights, there's nobody to help. And it's like, you know, what do you do?
It's only a right if it's only a right if the people and the law enforce it.
Yes, you have to have departments that enforce that.
Right, right.
So they put a law on the books, but then they just laugh at it and don't back it up.
Yeah, like this girl that went to the police department and they say, well, why are you here arguing like a gypsy? Just leave your husband. But if you, financially you are dependent, how do you leave your husband?
Yeah, it's not that easy.
Wow.
Yeah. Adrian, you want to continue?
Due to a lack of consistent social care, NGOs and religious groups often step in to help women victims, but they cannot offer national coverage and lack oversight of their activities. Outside of Bucharest and Romania's bigger cities, the options for help of abused women are limited. No one to call for help. If a woman in Romania believes she is a victim of domestic violence, she may want to talk to someone about her situation, but there is no emergency number. Recently, I put up my phone number in the comments section of an article about domestic violence, asking if any victims of domestic violence would like to contact me to tell me their story. I received a call from Ioana, a woman who has been in an abusive relationship for about 20 years. She said she was about to slit her wrists. She thought it was from an emergency hotline. I said I wasn't equipped to help her, but we talked for a couple of hours. She wondered if there was a number she could call. I asked around, but could not find one. The only one I found was in the Romanian-speaking Republic of Moldova. It seems if Romanian women are on the verge of suicide following years of abuse from their husbands, their only chance of help is to dial up another country. The right laws are not working. Although the legislation has become more supportive towards abused women in the last decade, the forces of law and order are still unprepared to manage cases of domestic violence with consistency. In Romania, the restraining order was first introduced in 2012, following a case where a husband shot dead his wife at her workplace after she had filed complaints to the police. Courts in Romania issue around one order a day. Though a useful instrument, sometimes the restraining order does not work properly. For instance, Mihaela, an abused woman, applied to a court and won a restraining order against her husband, but the moment it expired, he started threatening her over the phone. She asked for a second restraining order, and the court told her that she can only use the order to prevent physical abuse. The former husband, who still sends her threatening texts, is now applying for custody of the children. According to experts, it is unclear what sanctions exist for aggressors who violate the order. Moreover, Andreea Braga from Centrul Filia, an organization promoting gender studies, tells me for an application for an order to be successful, a woman needs to make a formal complaint to the police, a forensic certificate, and at least 2 witnesses who are not her relatives. These are major obstacles, as abuse usually happens at home. In the case of Madalina, the only witnesses were her children, and when she shouted for help, none of her neighbors intervened. Meanwhile, the modus operandi of Mihaela's husband was to grab his wife by the hair and strike her against the floor, leaving no marks. A forensic expert told her that she needs bruises, blood, or cuts for a certificate. For a certificate to prove abuse. Restraining orders should be an emergency instrument, but they take time to obtain. Andreea Braga states that on an average, a woman has to wait 33 days. For most women, this is 33 days too long. Pregnancy, health and nutrition starts from before conception. In Romania, many rural women have little access to prenatal care or family planning advice. Sometimes this is because they are unaware they are entitled to free checkups. Sometimes it is for logistical reasons. For example, they live far away from the doctor's general practice facility or cannot reach it due to snowy or muddy conditions. For many, the first time they see a doctor is when they give birth. A study from 2009 found that around 5% of women give birth without a single prenatal visit. This means that every year, 10,000 pregnancies are not medically attended. The lack of an outreach program means that the most vulnerable woman often falls through the gaps in the system. This is exacerbated by a shortage of community nurses and Roma health mediators. and the tendency of GPs working in rural areas to seek better working conditions in the city or abroad, with an estimated 12,000 Romanian medics having left. According to World Health Organization data, in 2009, Romania had the lowest number of physicians per 100,000 inhabitants in the EU, and the second lowest number of nurses per 100,000 people after Greece. A study in 2007 by the Co-PH Formal Interest Group for physicians found that 54% of physicians would like to work abroad, with the main reasons being poor working conditions and low wages. Doctors are partially paid on a per capita rather than per service basis, which means that once a woman is registered, there is no incentive to make sure she turns up for checkups and treatment. However, the patient has the incentive of low cost or even free prescriptions. Romania's breastfeeding rate is almost 3 times lower than in the EU, with only 12.6% of babies exclusively receiving breast milk at 6 months old. This deprives both mother and child of the numerous health and psychological benefits that nursing confers, from increased protection against disease for both parties to greater bonding that reduces the likelihood of abandonment. Prostitution and human trafficking. The legality of prostitution in Europe varies by country. Some countries outlaw the act of engaging in sexual activity in exchange for money, while others allow prostitution itself, but not most forms of procuring, such as operating brothels, facilitating the prostitution of another, deriving financial gain from the prostitution of another, soliciting, loitering. The legal and social treatment of prostitution differs widely by country. In Sweden, Norway, and Iceland, it is illegal to pay for sex, but not to be a prostitute. The client commits a crime, but not the prostitute. In Eastern Europe, the anti-prostitution laws target the prostitutes because in these countries, prostitution is condemned from a moral conservative viewpoint. Prostitution has been decriminalized in Romania in 2014. The government had considered legalizing and regulating it in 2007. The Association for the Promotion of Women in Romania opposes legalized prostitution, as they view prostitution as another form of violence against women and girls. Romania is among the 11 countries listed by the United Nations as the biggest source of human trafficking, based on reported numbers of victims. Every year, thousands of women and girls, some as young as 13, are kidnapped or lured by promises of well-paid jobs or marriage and sold to gangs who lock them up in nightclubs and brothels or force them to work on the streets. A UN report has found more than 80% of both men and women hold gender-biased views against women.
That's in Romanian. It actually says that the women's rights are inspired since 1791 from the French Revolution.
Yeah. Marital rape, even though marital rape has been declared as a crime via law 197 out of 2000, which modified Article 175, Paragraph 1, Penal Code. More times is needed for the acceptance that the institution of marriage is not a castle on which the husband has immunity, states a report titled National Analysis Romania by Albu Laura. And further, according to the new regulations, Article 217, Paragraph 1 makes the distinction that rape, as previously defined, is punished with a term of imprisonment of between 3 and 10 years and the removal rights. Paragraph 2 adds punishment is severe detention from 15 to 20 years and the removal of certain rights if the victim is a family member, such as a husband or a close relative. These provisions related to family members are not included in the new Penal Code, Article 218, but only with reference to people who are directly related and siblings. The Penal Code does not refer to rape within relationships. The length of the prison term for a rape conviction depends on the gravity of the circumstances and the age, physical, and psychological state of the victim. A major problem remaining is how to prove the rape. Women's rights in Romania are abolished as a result of the work of Lenin and Stalin being considered as a deviationism burgess during the last 109 years of all Europe celebrates the International Day of Women's Rights, which in Romania was translated as Mother's Day, twisting the meaning. What?
Yeah, I never knew this until I read this article. That's why I was wondering, why is everybody saying the International Day of Women when I knew it's Mother's Day.
Wow. Well, good that they figured that out again, because that is interesting. So 1929, women in Romania were for the first time given the right to vote, but only those who had high school diploma. At that time, 92% of the women did not go to high school. Wow. Mihaela Miroiu is the leader of the feminist movement in Romania. She says that in Romania, nothing changed in the last at least 5 years. Romanian people still keep to the patriarchal society. During the communism, the right that was given to women was the right to work, like they did not work before. Girls starting early in life, 5 to 6 years of age, were educated in the work, in the field, and in the kitchen. They were required to know how to cook, how to clean, iron, take care of the kids, and husband. We have a word for that, gospodina.
Yeah, exactly.
How to work in the field, and they were working to make money for dowry. They could not marry if they didn't have everything a house needs, from furniture to towels, curtains, tablecloths, bedding, etc. So girls were chosen based on many criteria, and it was a big stress for the parents, always being afraid that their daughter might not be good enough and chosen by some guy to marry her. Women were raped also, and it was always her fault. The girl would be stuck with the baby. Nobody would ask who is the father, no responsibility for the men. They would force her, get her pregnant, laugh, and leave. The rest was her problem. And nobody would ever marry her since virginity was a requirement, plus a child was an expense. Romanian men do not want a woman that has sexual experience. It is a matter of pride. They don't want anybody to say, I had your woman. But this is not the case with men. Girls were not allowed to get out of the house if it was dark outside or go anywhere and do anything without a male being with her to protect her. It was better for people to have boys than girls. The life of the parents that had a boy was much easier. And there were certain spots also, if I can add, when we went back to visit, during the daytime, you weren't allowed to be alone because of human trafficking pickups that were happening in the area. Anyways, today the feminist movement is giving parents a message saying, don't tell your daughter, don't get pregnant. Teach your son not to get anybody pregnant.
They are trying to change, but it will take a very, very long time.
It's amazing how far behind they are, everything.
Yes.
It's like they've had curtains up around blocking them from what goes on in the world and to not even know.
Well, that was the communism. You know, we had a big curtain between East and West, and that's why they did not allow us to know anything about what's happening in the West.
So what about now social media? Because when we read about some of the other, well, the one I did was Iran, but other places, they managed to learn things that were going on and connect with others that had similar issues through social media. Do they not have access to any social media? Do the women not have any kind of access?
They have a lot of access, and there is a lot of we call it emancipation of the woman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have a lot of that.
It's mostly in the cities, like the big cities.
Yeah, it depends of the education of the family, of the parents, of, you know, how the parents teach their kids. And if women are educated and independent, they behave differently. But a big part of this is being able to go out in the world, to visit other countries and see how other women are treated, and the fact that they do have rights. They are important in life. You know, it's not like what it is said in our country. So this is how it's beginning to change. But men will not give up. It is, I don't know how long it takes for men to change their opinion. And since, women are chosen, they can't walk up to a guy and say, hey, would you like to marry me? Because that's not okay. Because of that, women have to take a lot. Sometimes they give up their rights because of that. So, do you want to read more, Adriana?
Where?
There's the beginning.
Okay. One woman was asked, have you ever been happy in your life? She answered, never. All I did in my life was to take care of the house, the field, the kids, and the husband. Have you ever been to the hair salon in your life? Never. What for? As soon as you get married, you put the headkerchief on, and that's it. The headkerchief was a sign of submission, a sign that you were under somebody's dominion. You had a master. It is a sin to enter the church without your head covered. In Adventism as well, read 1 Corinthians 11. If a woman would be at the pulpit without her head covered, she would be taken down in front of the church or counseled. During the communism, the abortion was illegal. 1966, the anti-abortion decree, you would go to jail for that. No doctor would perform abortion. It was like the reign of terror. The idea was for the white race to multiply because the gypsies were multiplying too much. The title of heroic mother was invented for those women that were making 10 or more children or would have 5 children under the age of 18. No contraceptives were available, so women learned to perform abortions on themselves by using the IV tubing, or they would take chemicals that somebody would say it would work. Many women died that way from bleeding and infections. They could not go to the hospital because it would have been known that they did, and they would go to jail. They were not actually treated until they would say how they did it or who did it. TV shows, magazines, all existing media at the time, songs on radio, and all it was targeted to the housewife, showing pictures of women that knit or crochet or sew clothes, take care of the family. The International Day of Women's Rights being changed to Mother's Day. Children were reciting poems on TV saying, like, my mother went to the hospital and when she came back, she brought me a little brother, and ever since I love her more. I remember those ridiculous poems. Or I love my mom because she is gentle and kind with me. 1948 amendment. And they were very emotional poems too that they had.
Yeah, it's all targeted.
Yeah. So
but see, you don't know.
Yeah. 1948 amendment to the Romanian Constitution was made where women were given vote rights and equal pay rights with men, but this was a weapon of Communist Party propaganda. From 1957, the National Women Council was formed after the communism took over the country, and with this, the private property became state property and the majority of people were moved to cities. Women started to pursue education, becoming doctors, scientists, engineers, even crane drivers. This lady that was a crane driver said that she wanted to have a male job to prove that she can do what a man can do. With the emancipation of the woman, the commentator notes that young people were getting married out of love without the intervention of the parents. The wife was called life and work companion, but media always portrayed the ideal woman as a woman of character that makes her husband happy. Also, those years, the education was considered the basis of the character, and high school education was mandatory. The commentator notes that with the education and the independence of the woman, the divorce was at high rate. In 1964, Romania was top rated in Europe, 1 in 5, in the capital, 1 in 2. Women that had money, jobs, and were educated would not allow themselves to live in abuse. Good for them. 1964, another decree made.
I think that's the only way.
Yeah. There's this clip of that Jordan Peterson guy that keeps going around online where he keeps trying to share this statistic that the higher a woman's IQ goes, the less likely she is to get married. And if she does, she wants someone of equal or greater IQ or intelligence. and men are complete opposite. They're willing to take, you know, someone much lower monetary, who make less money and are less educated than them. But women don't stand for that, because what that creates is an uneven power dynamic.
They want someone they can control.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's really interesting how he shares that statistic as if they're, you know, his point is, well, the more intelligent they become and the bigger of job they get, they become intimidating and incapable of having a family and making children. And it's like, no, that's not what that statistic is saying. It's really scary what that statistic is saying, actually. And so it's, anyways. And Troy, I think if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. I keep seeing it everywhere, popping up all the time. But anyways, 1964, another decree made the family the nucleus and the basis of the society, giving right to the federal government to get involved in families that they thought were not led right by the moral principles of socialism for the right education of the children. Late 60s, another saying was brought up that the woman needs to be helped with the household chores, not replaced, not equal, but just helped. The natural role of the woman was transformed in patriotic duty. After the invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968, in Romania was instituted the mandatory military service for women. Yeah, they only use women when they, as a last resort, and they absolutely need them. And then all of a sudden the woman can do all this stuff, but not when they need her. Anyways, women were promoted to the leadership jobs, and that all because the first lady of the country wanted to say that she was an example in everything. During the 80s, the differences between men and women diminished because of the poverty, the long lines at the grocery store where the mother and the father had to go to, or they would not have food for the children. 1989, the fall of communism gave freedom to everybody to travel in the world and see from other countries a better life. Women being treated better with dignity and respect, also being hard workers, they made money and became independent. Feminism movement, women asking to be treated like a person and not like an object. We want to be free, not to be bound to so many rules because the men don't like it. I want to dress the way I like without being afraid that some men would attack me. My body, my choice. Emmanuel University from Oradea and Evangelical University speaks against the feminist movement, which has a lot to do with majority of... How did Evangelical get there?
Well, once see, the thing is that what people don't understand is whatever is happening in this country, it spreads immediately around the world. You know, if you look, only one thing that everybody knows, American Idol, or how do you call the other one, The Voice, once it was started here, like I don't know within how many years, it was in every single country in the world, you know. So America is a big example and the leading country in the entire world. That's why, you know, it's so important.
Yeah.
It's really kind of interesting when you think about how the United States is copying the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages coming upon us, that if everybody copies the United States and the United States is going the direction it's going, you can see the domino effect that way as well.
Yes, it's the same. So read the rest of the thing.
Also being hard workers, they made money and became independent.
No, it's Emmanuel University.
Oh yeah, sorry, I totally lost it. Let's see. Evangelical University speaks against the feminist movement, which has a lot to do with majority of Christians and Orthodox population. Of course, they use a lot of Bible verses in their favor. Thus saith the Lord. Ephesians 5:22-23. Wives, submit yourselves unto your husband, unto your own husbands, as unto the Lord. 23. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it.
This verse 25 is not very much read. It's just the first part that matters, you know.
Yeah. This verse was very frequent cited in the SDA. If there is any problem in a marriage, it is always her fault, and people gossip and talk bad about the woman. Trying to fit in this stereotypical box made by the society is a continual struggle in Romania. I was a kid in the church. Wait, this is you?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out.
Well, many others, it's me. But
what news site? I wasn't understanding the right. That's okay. That works. Okay, so I was a kid in the church, and whatever I would do, like fuss around and not listen, or my skirt got pulled above my knees, my mom would tell me, be careful, people are going to talk about you and nobody will want you. Terms like love goes through the stomach are constantly you mean the stomach is the key to a man's heart?
No, it's like if you know how to read further and you'll see. You need to know how to work and how to satisfy the man. Otherwise,
I know.
Won't.
The American version of that is the key to a man's heart is through his stomach. Yeah. So are constantly told to the girls to point to them how important it is for a woman to know to cook well, to behave the way the society. Okay, to behave the way the society expects you to behave so you can get married. But it is that as soon as you get married, you find out none of these is true. Romania is a country where men's world fits perfectly. It was watching on YouTube demonstrations by women for women's rights, and what you can see is lots of men on the side of the road mocking, laughing, grabbing women from the demonstrators and hitting them. And those men call themselves Christians. In the religious world of Romania, equality in the feminist movement is seen as the work of the devil. Whatever organization or movement is started in the USA, whatever rights people are fighting for in this country is followed shortly in the same organizations and movements around the world. USA is the big brother and the leading example in the world, and many times these organizations are financed by USA. If it was not for the feminist movement in USA, Romania would have never started anything like this. Romanian men have too much power to even think about giving it up. They like to do whatever they want and nobody tells them otherwise. The wife is not included in the decisions of the household. Wife's salary is in her husband's pocket. She works equal hours with her husband, but then when they come home, he is tired, puts his feet up and watches TV or reads the newspaper, and the cooking, cleaning, doing homework with the kids, etc. is her job. She never ends. Even the weekend is full of errands for her while he plays football with the friends or goes fishing to relax. The employment rate for women aged 20 to 64 is 60.6% compared to 78.9% for men. The difference is greater for middle-aged women whose inactivity rate is 5% higher than the EU average, 12 mainly due to child care responsibilities. Patriarchal attitudes, though changing, still persist. 12% of respondents to a World Vision survey said that women who work cannot care for their children as well as non-working women. 36% believe that women do not need to be fulfilled both personally and professionally. 16% think that men cannot take care of the children as well as women, and 16% believe that men manage business better than women. On top of that, it's not just that society looks at women like they have to take care of all the household stuff, but if a man does actually try to and is good at it, everyone laughs at him and calls him a woman.
Yeah.
So you can't even win there if you can do that as a man. So
it's really amazing to think how human beings treat one another.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what you read about the abuse and stuff, I'm thinking, you know, in my little small experiences, if I had no way to get out, I can see why they'd be suicidal. There's no hope.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there is a constant education since you were born that makes you be submissive and listen and just, you know, never lift your head up. And if that happens today in Romania, it's a big, big step.
So you're basically groomed.
Yep.
Groomed from birth.
Yeah, exactly.
Way worse than just putting pink or blue on you.
Yeah, so, you know, here in this country, even though there is so much inequality that you learn about, women have it so much better than what is in Romania today. And it's not Romania only. Russia is the same thing, and many other countries in Europe.
All of that Eastern Bloc is the same.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it has a lot to do with the eastern part of the
Eastern Orthodox
Roman,
Church.
yeah, of the Roman Empire. Those influences, you know, from Turkey, from Middle East, they're all felt in Romania.
Well, it's still, people are still fighting. So you can see protests on TV. You can see women's rights protests, LGBTQ protests all over those countries. But how the majority of the population is quietly, they go home and they still perform this system.
Well, even with us here, even with us in our group, there's many things that even though we talk equality, there's many things that we still have in our mind that, you know, it has a lot to do with those rights and the equality that
you mean the Romanian group?
Let go. So it's education, and you know, trying to get educated from whatever material you can is gonna bring out from your mind all those things that you still hold on. And that's what's happening with many people in Romania. You know, this is so new to them, they never heard of. And it's like logically, intellectually, you have to explain them why. And many times it has a big conflict with religion, because you go back to the Bible and what is the Bible telling you? You know?
Yeah.
So that's the issue. Although the Romanian law recognizes the equality of chances between men and women, the traditions still places the woman on a lower position than the man. The World Economic Forum statistic on equality of chances between men and women places Romania last in the European Union and 72nd worldwide. The Romanian, yes?
Second out of how many?
Well, I don't know how many countries are in the world.
Yeah, well. It's hard to imagine it worse than what we've just heard.
So at least we're not the last in the world.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds hard to imagine that it's worse than what we just read.
Well, there's at least 200 something on our list, I think, or 300.
Wow.
So we're top 1/3.
Yep.
I think it's worse than what I saw in Iran.
Yes. Iran, I don't think so. You know, I knew what article to find, and I know life in Romania, and I know how it is exactly. But when you do a study, that's my issue now. I have to do next Germany, and that's the issue. You don't know the language, you don't know the life there, and you are just based on a couple of whatever you see on TV, and you think that's what it is. Yeah. But it's not. You know, Iran, I don't think so. Yeah. Those countries are, you know, I had a co-worker from those countries and things he's saying, and when I talk to him, the way he is, when you talk about women and women's rights and stuff like that, is like, I mean, you can see. Plus, I told you guys that I lived for almost a year in Israel, so I saw many things of how they deal with women and stuff like that in those countries. So.
Yeah, again, it's in the cities. If you look at videos and lifestyle now, and I don't think we see that, Mom, since we haven't been there in a while, but in the cities, they're living really liberal lives compared to, you know, in the other regions. So like Bucharest is very ahead of its time and ahead of the nation. But definitely everywhere else. Because Romania is so weird. You have all this advancement and then you still have villages with horse-drawn carriages and stuff. So it's like 3 centuries living together at once.
Wow.
It's weird.
Yeah, I know, but even in Bucharest, even though you think it's so liberal and everything, it's just because people don't judge you like they would if you live in a village. But the mentality, even though it doesn't show, it's the same. Like here, see, only 12% of Romania's lawmakers are women. Only 53 out of 383 deputies and 12 out of 167 senators were women. As of September 1st, 2015, that's pretty recent.
Wow.
And yeah, as you remember, when was the election? 2018, 2019, I believe, was the election in Romania. One of the candidates was a woman. I didn't care about, you know, her party, what she was for and stuff like that. I was just looking at the people to see what are they saying about a woman being a president of the country. And they were laughing and mocking, and some people, like demonstration, they were saying, where have you ever heard a woman to be able to lead a country? So, and this is, you know, the capital, Bucharest, where you are saying that people are so liberal.
Yeah.
That's what they said, you know, they didn't pass the test. That's why I was saying, because they just cannot, the woman can be the best in the world and they will not accept a woman president. And even though Johannes, he sold the country and he destroyed it and everything, they chose him again.
Oh, he's nice, tall, blonde hair, blue-eyed man.
Yeah, he is exactly what they want. Big, tall, whatever. The bull.
Yeah. Where were you reading?
I'm just trying to see if I can jump over some stuff. Yeah, women are the most harassed at workplace. No matter how educated they are, there's always a boss who's a male, and he would, you know, they ask sexual favors or whatever. So no matter how educated a woman is, there's still things that she fears. So Romania vows to launch an integrated system to prevent all forms of violence and encourage a cadre of gender equality experts. Romania will continue to be fully committed to the protection and promotion of all women's rights, as well as to the implementation of legal international instruments such as the Beijing Platform of Action, the Council of Europe Convention, or Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, and UN Security Council Resolution 1325. These are all words. What actually is happening is real life that we read in the beginning. They don't have departments to help women yet. They don't have, if somebody needs help to run from an abusive relationship, they have nowhere to go. Unless you have supportive parents, you don't have anybody. These are all good changes. It will take a long time to be accomplished because of thousands of years of inequality. But the most important in Romania, like anywhere in the world, is educating people what abuse and inequality is. Of equal importance is giving power to women through their education. As we saw already, even in Romania, women that are educated or independent or both are less likely to stay in an abusive relation. So there is a feminist movement, there is work going in that direction, but in my opinion, it's going to take a very long time. I think that the end of the world is going to come before Romania will be will be equality.
It sure looks that way.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the issues, all the educated people leave, right? And that's because the economy is so bad and all the discrimination. So since you have the opportunity to go, you go.
Yeah, it's harder for it to change there too. If they just get educated and leave, then no one stays around to help.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But because of how intense I think someone needs to get muted. Elaine. Because of how bad the bribery is there and everything.
Yeah.
And the like when we were back there in 2006, 2005, I think it was 2006. There were commercials on TV saying bribery is illegal because no one knew that apparently. It's so corrupt.
Illegal. It is illegal and there is law. But if you try to go to the law, who is the law? Let's say you have a problem with the police department and you go to the law, the lawyers and the judge and everybody is friends with the police, and who do you think is going to win?
Yeah.
And you end up in a worse position, But anyway, with the communists being gone, Romania is, trying to be a part of the EU and all that kind of stuff. There is a lot of rules imposed on Romania if they want to be still part of the EU, and they have to comply with those. That's why many things are changing and they will implement many things, and that is for the good of everybody. And, hopefully one day there will be equality.
That's amazing. I always, I wasn't always strong. I've talked about that before, but I picture life as, for people as always, you come up to obstacles. We're on this journey here that we're on, and we run into all these obstacles, right? And for me, in my life, it's like you have to be a survivor. You have to find a way over, around, or under, or through, or whatever. But what we just went through, it showed that it puts people in a place that they're trapped in a box, and there's no door anywhere on the box. But it's nice to hear that there are some changes. How long have they been part of the EU?
I don't know exactly, but it was like after 1989, 1998. 1998 is when I came here, and it was after that they became part of the EU.
Wasn't it like 2008?
2000 something. So it's recent enough, you can't change the whole mentality in 20 years.
2007.
2007, see, that's really.
So when if you were to, I'm just trying to think things through and see it in perspective, what we were reading last night about the League of Nations, when the League of Nations came about, it brings help me understand it because I got this wrong, but it brings these nations together and then they all have to comply on certain ways. So is that what
Yes.
the EU is? The EU has to, now if you're going to be a part of the EU, we're going to have a say in help developing your country and coming out of these.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the European Union is set up with the aim of ending frequent and bloody wars between neighbors, which culminated in the Second World War. So as of 1950, the European coal and steel community begins to unite European countries. And you still have, like with Serbia, Croatia, just some weird little things happening over there, which is what they're trying to stop. But it also helps boost the people. So it's like you join this group and there's people who have better and higher economic status and people who have lower, and it kind of helps the people with struggling economies to kind of come up and boost up. And it's nice that way. But then you get people like the UK and Brexit who are like, well, we don't want to be a part of this because all these foreigners are coming in here and stealing our jobs, and it's just, you know, the whole United States crisis again.
Well, everything is so new, and you know, all over Europe, they did not have system put in place of how to deal with people coming in your country, you know. So they have to learn. Many, you know, business owner, they like to take these people coming from other countries and keep them without hiring them, just, you know, giving them a job, a very low paid job, which they were, you know.
But that's what America did too, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what's happening.
Okay. So Erin's gonna come in at 2:30, right?
Right.
So I'm gonna not do the equality part of Colombia. I'm just gonna do, the reason that I wanted to do this sooner was because of what's happening this week. I don't know if anyone's seen this on the news. It's been kind of not coming up as prominent, but it's just gonna take like 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, 5 minutes is okay, as long as everybody has time for you know, bathroom break or whatever they need to.
Yeah, it'll be super quick. So I'm not going to read all this. All I'm going to say is if Colombia is located right underneath Panama, it's right next to Venezuela. It's the top part of the continent where Brazil is on. And they have a long history, but they've been democratic for a while. And they've been having huge struggles with the whole pandemic situation, and they definitely have a really big problem with economic stagnation and people losing their jobs, and a huge problem with poverty right now. And the coronavirus exacerbated that whole situation. And someone was trying to put something on the thing here. So what happened is a lot of people lost their jobs and their livelihoods during the pandemic and all the shutdowns. And I think it's up to 40-something% now that of the entire country is in poverty, and people are all living hand to mouth. They make like $2 a day or $300 or something a month, which isn't enough to cover their necessary expenses. And so a lot of civil unrest has been getting intense over there. And this is what I was seeing on some social medias. They finally came out with a better video. You might need to, I'll show this after. That way you can pause the video after that, the recording, because it's a YouTube video. But basically there's been an incredible amount of protests, and the government, because of coronavirus, decided to make protesting illegal so that the coronavirus doesn't spread. But the people are at a point where there was a tax bill. The president, Ivan Duque Marquez, wanted to bring in a 20% tax bill, and he wanted to put it on extended to include water, eggs, utilities, funeral services. He wanted to tax all of those things 20%. And the people were like, we already barely are alive. majority of people can only afford one meal a day, and all they're eating is eggs with rice, and you want to tax that as well. So there were massive protests, and those protests turned into police killing protesters and using actual firearms. And that's what's been going on this week, has been just this mass protesting. And just this was just like a bringing awareness thing, like Christine was saying, for people to look into it. So you can all see there's a video that I'm going to show you real quick first off, because it's not going to interfere with YouTube. I don't think. It's the bottom. It was a United Nations summit that was happening on biodiversity. I think it was Thursday night. And I'm just going to show you, I'm going to put the volume down on it. I'm going to show you the video description and the live chat that was happening. And I don't think that should have anything to do with like YouTube copyright problems. So I'm just going to bring this up. Let me see if I could share this. Can you all see this?
Yes.
So the volume is off. If you look over here, this is the agenda. Colombia wasn't anywhere on the agenda. I was just looking through it and reading it there. But if you look at the live chat for this UN summit over here, every single comment is SOS Colombia. Everything. They've been having such a difficult time over there, and they keep trying to bring awareness to it. But what happened is the president shut down communication. They're shutting down Wi-Fi and internet connection so that people can't post what's happening there. And the news has been struggling to come out of there. But I think news stations and people are starting to come like more forward with it now in English. There was a lot more in Spanish, but there more stuff is happening. And now if you want to pause the recording, because I'm going to play this video real quick, if that's okay.